Hi, I'm Diana Montford, and I am, yes, I was born male, I became female, I'm transgender. Now that we got that out of the way, my guests are the fabulous Miss Alina Adams, ladies first, of course, Tom. Miss Alina Adams, who is a truly prolific author. How many books have you written?
This one is my 20th.
Yes, who has written, and these are two of her latest, and we're going to discuss those. And of course, the famous Tom Lisanti, who invented a genre by writing books about soap operas, which no one had done before. And he interviews cast members. And he interviews cast members and does all sorts of things. He's also written a book about 60 starlets and all sorts of lovely stuff, right?
Yes.
There you go. And he's written a book called Dueling Harlows, which is terrific. It's about the two biopics of the actress Jean Harlow, which were made in 1965. And yes, two biopics of the same person released a month apart. Yeah. Two different studios, two different actresses. Yeah. Okay, so, and you can imagine how that went. So anyway.
You don't have to imagine it. You can read Tom's book.
There you go, and you should, and it's wonderful. But as I said in my review, it lays bare the inner workings of Hollywood, which it does. And my mother was a writer for 20th Century Fox, so I know the dirt, folks, and so do you.
Yes, well, it's told to me anyway.
Well, there you go. So anyway, so now, who wants to go first? Tell us about your books.
Well, I'm going to start with Super Soap Scenes, a time capsule of daytime drama's greatest moments, which Tom actually contributed to. So this way it'll be both of us. The idea was, soaps are coming up on having been on the air almost for 100 years now. If you talk about starting with you start with the radio soaps. So if you try to ask a soap fan what their favorite soap moment was, they'll describe something and then they'll say, but then wait, the only reason this was good is because of what came before it, and the only reason this resonated was because of the whole storyline. So you really shouldn't ask a soap fan what their favorite moment is, but I did it anyway because I'm contrary that way. So what I did was first I polled soap fans about some of their favorite moments from all the soaps, not just the ones still on the air, but the ones that were on the air briefly, the ones that were on the air for 70 years.
How many are on the air right now?
Well, it depends on what you define as on the air. On the networks, ABC has General Hospital. NBC no longer has a show on the air, but it has Days of Our Lives on its Peacock network. But on CBS, you have The Young and the Restless, The Bold and the Beautiful, and The New Kid on the Block, Beyond the Gates. So it depends on how you count. But I think in its heyday, what were there? As many as 30 shows on the air at one point? I mean, they were much shorter. They weren't an hour long.
15 minutes.
They were 15-minute shows.
And often had organ music.
Well, they definitely had organ music. But so I asked folks from all the shows, and then once I had collected what the favorite moments were, I went back to the actors, to the writers, to the producers, to the directors who had created them for all the behind-the-scenes scoop on how those scenes came together. You had Eileen Kristen from Ryan's Hope on earlier, and Tom helped facilitate that. She contributes to the book, but as you can see just off the cover, we have Guiding Light, we have Ryan's Hope, we have Edge of Night, we have Days of Our Lives, and that's just the cover. Inside we have everything from Santa Barbara to Guiding Light to As the World Turns to Edge of Night to As the World Turns to Sunset Beach to Dark Shadows.
I love Dark Shadows.
Dark Shadows. Talk about a show that was only on the air for a couple of years, but had some
from
serious...
66 to 71.
Yeah, and had some serious impact.
God, yes.
Do you think we'd have the sexy vampires of today if we didn't have Barnabas and Dark Shadows?
What he did was he introduced the guilt-ridden vampire.
Yeah, yes.
Not the evil, sexy vampire, but the I hate being
with
a
the
vampire.
soul, yeah. Well, I mean, talk about Angel on Buffy. He was just Barnabas revisited.
Right.
Oh no, I have a soul. I'm so sad. Oh, pity me, young pretty girls. So.
Well, I destroy you.
Well,
most men are like that.
I was just going to say, do you have to be a vampire to do that? So anyway, so that is the book, and I have everything from, for instance, I have Jess Walton, who plays Jill on The Young and the Restless, talking about her rivalry with Kay. I have Jill Laurie Hurst, who was the writer on Guiding Light, who did the first female same-sex romance on the show. She wrote about how that came together. I have James Reynolds, who's on Days of Our Lives, talking about, something that can happen. You have one wife in the room with you, and suddenly your dead wife is there. These things happen. And how, as an actor, do you play out something?
And let's not forget Amnesia an evil twin, and a plane crash in the Andes.
Well, just so you know, so since you so well brought it up, I will tell you that, the categories include classic couples, going to the chapel, which is weddings, bad to the bone, which is villains, a time to be born and a time to die. But then, of course, back from the dead.
Of course.
Of course, you can't have
They
a time
found
to
the
die.
plane.
Exactly, back from the dead. Make them laugh, comedic scenes, because soaps have also had some
And
wonderful...
Eileen Kristen is wonderful at
Absolutely.
those, yes.
Social issues. The thing is...
Same-sex couples.
Well, here's the thing. So soaps handled so many issues on the air before prime time got to it. For instance, I don't know if you remember, in the 80s, there was a movie called Something About Amelia with Ted Danson.
Oh, yes,
which was
about
incest.
right.
But here's the thing. Loving, the soap opera created by Agnes Nixon and Doug Marland, had been playing that story already on daytime, but ABC wanted to promote it as first time ever on TV, so they made Loving kill that story so that they could pretend that it was the first time on TV. So soaps have done social issues long before
Well, I
prime time.
remember One Life to Live in the late 60s did, Ellen Hawley was playing the part of Carla Benari of an African-American woman who was passing for white. She was in the
Yes.
show an actress.
Yes.
And eventually she...
It turned out that her mother, Sadie, was on the canvas, but she was pretending that she was white, so she couldn't acknowledge who her mother was.
Exactly.
So those are just
Merle
some of the
Oberon,
things.
we're looking at you, girl.
Well, I just finished reading a book about Merle Oberon, and I looked at some of those photos, and I'm sorry, you had to be willfully telling yourself to not see that that was a woman of color.
Well, yes, but they thought she was Chinese. That's a funny thing.
She's Tanzania. She claimed she was from
Tasmania, yes.
Tasmania, that's it.
But no, but everybody in Hollywood at the time knew she was mixed race, but they had no clue she was Indian. They thought she was Chinese.
Right, and then she had her mother, who was actually her grandmother, but that's a whole other issue, pretending to be her maid. So, yeah. But when you look at photos at her, you're like, you are all just in denial. There's no way you can't see that as
Kay
a woman
Francis
of color.
was half African American.
Right, well.
And she was a huge star in the 30s. So, there you go.
Yeah.
But,
And now on to you, Tom.
Well, I was honored to write a chapter for Alina's book. I was starting my Texas book. I was deep into Texas after writing the book about Ryan's Hope, and I didn't know if I wanted to go back to Ryan's Hope because I thought I had said everything all I could say about Ryan's Hope. But I thought, if I don't do it, someone's going to go write something about Mary Ryan and Jack Vanelli, the characters in that for her. And I'm like, I want it to be focused on Eileen Kristen's Delia. And I chose, which a lot of people loved, was when Delia feigned blindness to hold on to her good guy Pat Ryan,
yes.
and stole a ocean cruise from her in-laws to try to reset their marriage. And the on that cruise, her faking blindness is revealed with just a toss of a hairbrush.
Spoiler.
And she catches it perfectly.
Yeah.
Babe Ruth couldn't have done
And
that.
so we have Eileen and Malcolm, who played Patrick,
Right.
explaining exactly how that scene came together and what they were thinking and all of that.
Yes.
So that's the kind of thing that it is. We take a scene or a moment or a slightly broader storyline. Like I have an interview with Eden Regel, who played Bianca, about coming out to her mother, played by Susan Lucci. So
I love Susan
Or
Lucci.
Linda Dano talks about
I love her.
Yeah, her scenes where they had the intervention where Felicia was an alcoholic and all of her
She's very
family
nice.
members.
I've met her.
She's
very
lovely.
nice. Yes,
She's
she
lovely.
is.
So we have an interview with her. We have Peter Bergman from The Young and the Restless, who had been Cliff on
He
All
was
My
cute,
Children.
yeah.
He's still cute. I got to tell you, he's still
good.
cute.
he was very open and honest
Oh,
about his...
very, very much so. No, I was stunned. I was interviewing him. I was like, you hear yourself what you're saying? But hey, his publicist was on the phone. Nobody stopped him.
What was he saying?
Well, there had been reports of some friction between Peter Bergman and Eric Braeden when Peter Bergman came
yes.
on the
Long
show.
show.
I thought
And
Eric Braeden was gorgeous, too.
Yes.
If you like snobs and cruel people.
See, thank you for explaining why I sort of hesitated. But Peter Bergman was incredibly honest about his early days on The Young and the Restless, took some of the responsibility on himself,
Right.
talked about that
Eric
relationship.
Braeden treated him badly.
Yes. It's sort of like, I don't want to be sued. But it's a matter of public record. People can go look it up.
Well, at least he drowned on the Titanic. Eric Braeden.
There you go. He was Jacob Astor, right?
Yes.
Is that who he was
One
playing?
of
Yeah.
those people. Yes.
Yeah, I think he was Astor. I
Yes.
think he was Astor. Because the Magnum...
Bastard, you said?
Could have.
I don't know.
You listen well.
But anyway, so how did you think of doing these books? This is great.
Well, I've written a number of books about interviewing actresses and actors from the 60s and 70s, and I became friendly with Eileen Kristen from Ryan's Hope, and she kept saying, why don't you do a book on Ryan's Hope? Why don't you do a book on Ryan's Hope? And I felt uncomfortable because Claire Labine, who was the co-creator, is still alive, and I figured if anyone was going to do a book on Ryan's Hope, it was going to be Claire, and she passed away. And I said, well, let me test the waters, and I interviewed Eileen, and from Eileen I got Roscoe Bourne, who was the second Joe Novak.
And Louis Schaefer.
Okay, you want to talk about
Yeah.
sexy? Let's take a
Right.
moment to Roscoe Bourne,
Yes.
shall we?
And a lovely guy, he was great. I interviewed him in person, and then Louis Schaefer, who played Ray Woodard, and it just kind of snowballed. And then but before I really got into it, I went to the daughters of Paul Mayer and the daughter of Claire Labine to get I wanted to let them know what I was doing. Paul's daughters, Rachel and Ruthie, were wonderful. I interviewed them. They contributed a lot. Eleanor, Claire's daughter, gave her blessing, but she didn't want to be interviewed for the book, unfortunately.
Why not? That's interesting.
She felt she couldn't talk about her mom. It was still a close, her mom died a couple of years prior, and she said she couldn't talk about it. She was very upset still that her mother had passed away. So, but she gave me, I would go back to her to fact check things, and she, via email, would tell me, yeah, that's right.
Well, this lovely lady,
Beverly McKinsey.
Yes,
yeah,
Beverly
her
McKinsey.
son, she's dead, but her son was totally forthcoming.
Yes, Scott
And
McKenzie.
he directs General Hospital, right?
Yes,
And I think he does some other
directed
show.
her on Beverly McKinsey on Guiding Light. Yes, and for Texas, I actually went to the Joyce Corrington, who is the co-creator with her husband Bill, and I asked her. She was my first interview, and I told her what I was going to do, and she gave me email after email, everything she could remember. Then we spoke on the phone. Everything she could remember, she gave me, and because I had her blessing, I continued with Texas, and which was quirky, and a lot of people didn't watch Texas. 'Cause
It only lasted a year, didn't it?
2.5 years.
And Ken Shiner,
Yes,
said it really hurt
they
his
poached
career.
him away from General Hospital.
when he was
because-
hotter than
Yeah,
hot.
when
White
everyone
hot.
on General Hospital was
Right.
white
Yes.
hot.
Yeah, unfortunately, it went up it went up against General Hospital on ABC with Luke and Laura skyrocketing, and on Guiding Light on CBS was also at its peak too, with some story with Doug Marlin was the head writer.
Well, writing
at that
it was
time.
the Kelly and Nola and Morgan era,
yes,
right?
and with Ross Marler and Jane Elliott was on.
Right,
yeah.
she played Carrie for
right,
a couple of
right.
Carrie and all her personalities.
Sorry, yes.
But it's interesting that you talked about Claire Labine, because I actually think Claire Labine wrote. If you put me up against a wall with a gun to my head and say name best soap storyline, for me it's what Claire Labine wrote at General Hospital with Maxie's heart transplant, and that's of course in here as well. But talk about she started with 5 completely disparate stories that you think had nothing to do with each other, and then they all converged in a way that I like to say it wasn't predictable, but it was inevitable. You could see how everything came together. So to me, Claire Labine is just a phenomenal writing
And
soap
Claire got
talent.
General Hospital's first Emmy for Best Writing.
Yes, because she deserved it.
After winning 6 Emmys for Best Writing for Ryan's Hope.
No, the kind of stuff that Claire wrote, I mean, she wrote both personal stories and larger stories, so you could sort of have the best of everything when Claire Labine was writing.
What do you do when you want to interview someone who was on a soap and says, listen, I had the worst time of my life. Don't even mention the name of that show or those awful people. Go away. Leave me alone. What do you do when somebody says that?
You go away and leave them alone.
That makes sense.
No, that's-
I've had people who said, I'll talk to you about the show, but I won't say anything about so-and-so.
Yeah,
don't
that's-
ask me
that's
about
very
so-and-so.
different,
And I'm
yeah.
like, fine. And we don't go there and stuff. Sometimes as you talk to them on the phone, they become a little more
Comfortable?
Or I'll talk to you, but I really don't remember much. It was 40 years ago, and an hour and a half later, you're still talking to them on the phone.
And the day I wore the yellow dress with the blue flowers, I said,
Sometimes
yes.
people remember more than what they
Or sometimes
think.
the questions that
Right.
you ask them make them think about something they've never thought
Well, as
about
Eric Braeden
before,
said, the
right?
day I wore the yellow dress with the blue flowers.
Some people want the questions beforehand to give
Yeah.
to refresh their memories. Others just want to go in let's just jump into
Yeah,
it.
sometimes I would send them video clips of the scenes, and that
Oh,
would
yeah.
Oh, that's
actually
a
help.
brilliant
No, that would
idea.
help
Yeah.
because that
Yes.
would
That
trigger
is a
their memories.
brilliant
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Well, now, this cannot be ephemeral. the great acting and great writing on these things has to live. And thanks to YouTube, it can. But so much of this was done, and a lot of
It's gone.
yeah, a lot. They
60s and
reused
70s.
the tape.
They reused the tapes.
ABC reused the tape, except for a handful of All My Children episodes. Like everyone has seen the clip of Susan Lucci saying Pine Valley isn't the corner of Hollywood and
And
Vine.
everyone has seen Judith Light having that meltdown on the stand.
But except for those key things, they rewrote over everything. They keep their ABC keeps their tapes in Fort Lee, and they would just reuse them.
Well, the only thing that did survive was Dan Curtis owned Dark Shadows,
Right.
so he kept everything.
And Claire Labine and Paul Mayer owned Ryan Soap originally and kept the tapes, even though they got ridiculed for doing it. How could you? That kept being told it's too expensive. Why are you
'cause you have
wasting
to
all that
store them,
money?
yeah.
They stored them in New Jersey. But in 2000, when SoapNet came along asking for those tapes, sure enough, there's pictures of Claire and Paul in New Jersey digging out the tapes.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it's fun because I've met so many actors who say, "Oh, a fan sent me a recording,"
Yes.
because the networks don't have them.
Right,
But fans,
yeah.
so especially those who were early adapters and had
Exactly,
the VCRs in the
yes.
late
Right.
70s, early 80s, they say a fan sent me this.
And they even include the commercials.
Yes, those are always fun.
Yes.
Whenever you get the vintage stuff.
the doctors, they kept the doctors.
Yes, because they're rerunning that
Oh,
now
I
on
remember
retro
that.
TV.
That was when? That was a long time
They have
ago.
the doctors back to 1968, but it wasn't Procter and Gamble, and I don't think it was NBC. I think it was, I don't know what company produced it, but they were smart enough.
Yeah, so now you have like a baby Alec Baldwin on the
Right,
Doctors.
right.
You have Kathleen
he
Turner.
was gorgeous when he
Yes.
was young.
Yeah. Well, Kim Zimmer, who was on The Doctors, she told me the story that when they were auditioning actors for the role of Billy, which is who Alec Baldwin played, she said they were on the floor and a production assistant came to them and she said to them, "You have got to go see this guy. We're auditioning right now." And she said, "We ran up and we watched his audition, and as she said, we were wiping drool off our mouths."
Yeah, he was really cute.
So, but you have that, and you have Kathleen Turner on
Right.
The Doctors. You
Who was
have,
gorgeous in those days.
Well, actually, this is my great Kathleen Turner story, is that in her book, which she wrote about acting, she now teaches at NYU, so she's given
Good.
acting a lot of thought. And so here's the thing, when she was on The Doctors, she said the writing was so inconsistent for her character that she just played Nola drunk all the time. She just assumed that she was drunk, and that's why her actions made no
Oh, well,
sense
that's a
from
very
one day to the
clever
next.
idea.
That was an acting,
Yes.
that was an act. And we also had... she played Lucinda on As the World Turns, and why am I blank? Elizabeth Hubbard. Elizabeth Hubbard was on The Doctors
Oh,
for
right.
years. She was part of a
Jordan
very, she was
And
actually
Jackie
the first.
Zeman
Yeah.
was also very famous. in
Jackie
it.
Zeman started on One Life to Live.
Right.
And in fact, when they moved her to General Hospital, she said it was the same week. She said, literally, Lana was dying, laying on the floor on One Life to Live, and an hour later, I was walking through the door in Port Charles.
Well, when I interviewed Joyce, Joyce and Bill were writing for Search for Tomorrow before they created Texas, and Search for Tomorrow was up against Ryan Soap, and when Joyce and Bill took over, the ratings surged on Search for Tomorrow when they brought in Ron Arentz and
That's Travis.
Travis, right? But she said to Procter and Gamble at that time, "Why aren't you saving the tapes?" And like, "Oh, it's too expensive." She's like, "No." She's like, "Cable just started
Yeah.
with CNN," and she's like, "There's probably going to be an audience for that." And she said they wouldn't even think of it. And then when they did Texas, surprisingly, Procter and Gamble did save the tapes. And so Texas, you could pretty much find almost the complete run of Texas on YouTube from fans and stuff.
Why didn't Texas work? Because on paper it sounds like a great idea, but in life it was not a
Well,
great
Dallas was in its heyday, which is probably
Right.
why
Well,
they
but
wanted
that's what I
Texas.
mean.
Yeah.
Why
Why
wouldn't
they wanted
Texas?
Texas?
Yeah.
The time slot was a big thing. They took Beverly McKinsey, who is from another world. She was like the villainess du jour, and everybody loved her. When they brought her over to Texas, they softened her character. She became like the romantic lead, and that turned a lot of fans.
Was that her idea or
No,
Texas?
no, it was Joyce and Bill.
Okay.
And Joyce says in our interview that was her biggest mistake.
Yeah.
Was they should have kept Iris as the villain, and they rather than turning her into a romantic heroine. The other thing I think with Texas was when they presented the Bible. Fred Silverman was the
sure,
head
yes,
of-
yes,
and
yes.
The Bible came back with 2 notes: more young people, no Mexicans. Because because it was set in Texas, so the ranch hands were a family of
It would make
Mexicans.
sense.
Max and Elena and Terry
But
and Ricky
they
were
had to
supposed to be
go?
Mexican.
Well, I think they just probably
they
whitewashed
just
them.
right. They just
Yeah.
became Caucasian, but it made no sense because that's how not for they. According to Joyce, Fred Silverman was not very thinking ahead of what an audience would relate to, and they had to take out. So they kept their first names, but they made them Deckers instead of the original last name, which she didn't.
Well, it's like by the time we get to Passions, we have the Lopez Fitzgeralds,
Yeah.
so you can pretty much.
I love
do
that
it.
name, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in Texas too, I think with Joyce and Bill, because they were actually screenwriters in Hollywood and they had Hollywood agents. The agents didn't know the ins and outs of soap contracts.
Right.
So as creators, they should have had like a year contract. They didn't. They were in the 13-week cycle.
Oh, Lord.
And because the ratings didn't
people
Mm-hmm.
said adios.
right.
Yeah.
So after 6 months,
No, you can't say adios because that
Oh,
would make
You're
you
right.
think
Yeah, oh.
so after 6 months, they were fired. They didn't give them enough time to work out the kinks and stuff.
Now, Ken was really upset with the way it went for him, wasn't he?
Yeah, Joyce remembers everything except she did not remember Kim Schreiner and she did not remember his character because he was. And I've learned this when writers are forced by the networks to create characters or storylines, then I don't get into it as much. And
He said, "I don't know why I'm here. What is this?
Right.
Why am I
Yeah.
here?"
and his character was thrown together, and then he.
But
makes
that
a good
happens
point.
so often on soaps. They're
Yeah.
so excited to sign a big name,
Right.
and then they don't know what to do with them. We see it all the time.
And Ken, who I interviewed for the book, had a good point. He goes, "So you have me. I'm relatively famous from General Hospital. You have Beverly McKenzie, who's the big star. You think they would put us together in a storyline?" And he goes, "I never worked with the actress the entire time. I was in a total different storyline." And I think he's correct. If they would have made him a friend of Iris's son Dennis, or got him
Well,
involved,
they could have cast him as Dennis. How's
Yes,
that
yeah,
for a thought?
right.
That would have been a brilliant thing
Yeah.
to do. Yeah.
But they kept them separate, and they just didn't know what. And he went through a romantic partner after another, and nothing clicked.
Well, also the opening, they went to a horse farm or something and shot.
The thing they did, they tried to ape prime time, where you have these establishing shots, like you
Right,
watch
yeah,
at
yeah.
hospitals.
Sure.
They spent a week in Houston. They did that. The problem was the other reason why the show started for 6 weeks on Another World. Another World was still 90 minutes. They kept it 90 minutes just so to launch Texas. So when Texas started as a standalone in August, people like me tuning in thought we were watching a soap from the very beginning, not knowing that it had already started 6 weeks ago on Another World. So you came into the middle of these storylines, and a lot of people were confused and they didn't know what was going on.
Is Texas a lesson in how not to produce a soap?
Right.
Is it a cautionary tale for all future producers?
Yes, definitely not to start a soap on another soap. Or if you're going to do it, you need to really promote it.
Which they did when they launched Port Charles off of
Right.
General Hospital.
Right.
They were much heavier into the promotion for that.
Yes, I don't think they promoted it enough when it was on.
And they
Another
promoted
World.
Santa Barbara like crazy when it started.
Yeah. But Santa Barbara was in an interesting position. They deliberately premiered it during the Olympics because the soaps were preempted on
Yes.
ABC. So as they said, NBC said at the time, we had this unprecedented opportunity.
And they did have people like Carolyn Jones and other.
That was
famous
Capitol. Carolyn Jones was
Oh,
on
I'm
Capitol.
sorry, my mistake.
So, but the fact is that, with Capitol, they launched it with a primetime movie.
Right.
With Port Charles, they launched it with a primetime movie.
Loving Two, right?
Loving Two,
Two,
yeah.
yeah, Loving,
so
yeah.
they didn't do that for Texas, right? It was just
No.
Another World, and
And
then now we're in
right,
Texas.
And
When I was in acting school, a bunch of my classmates would get under fives on Loving.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a friend of mine did a part as a drunken cocktail waitress on Loving.
Well, what's really fun is actually one of the scenes that I mention in the book is Bo and Nora when they got married on One Life to Live. First, it was Daytime's first interfaith wedding.
Oh, I loved Bo. He was Ace Buchanan's
yes,
son.
yes.
He,
It was-
he was the cute one?
Yeah.
The younger one?
Yes, the
The younger
younger one.
one.
I liked him. I really liked
so
him.
that's Bob Woods and Hillary Bailey Smith is playing Nora. Nora's Jewish, and Bo is whatever all generic
Right.
characters on Daytime
But you'll
are.
notice they're both Caucasian.
Yeah.
But they were married by Little Richard, But
Are you serious?
it's the stories in the book. Hilary B. Smith talks about Little Richard came in and married them, but the rabbi, since it was an interfaith marriage, it was Little Richard and the rabbi was played by Cameron Manheim, coming in to do a 3-day bit role, because that's the beauty of New York. You have all these amazing actors that you hire in bit parts. I mean, you have Callista Flockhart as a babysitter on Guiding Light.
Really?
Yeah, you have all these. If you're the sort of person, some of us might be a little obsessive and sort of like remember everything, and then Ally McBeal premieres and like, isn't that the babysitter from Guiding Lights?
Well, when Texas came out, I sent the book to Karen Richmond and John McCafferty, who played Elena and Billy Joe, and in the book
We have almost no time left.
I talk about the storylines, and there was a detective there played by Morgan Freeman. They had no clue that they acted with Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman was on Another World.
Well,
Right,
Carla
they went in-
Benari's mother is one of the stars of A Raisin in the
Well,
Sun.
we worked with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
I said he was and I actually found the clip and I sent it to them. And they're like, damn! If I would have known how to put it in my reels.
Brad Pitt had a small role on Another World, and the head writer at the time, Tom Racina, who I actually feature in here because he wrote Luke and Laura's Wedding, so I have a take on that. But he said Brad was sleeping on my couch, and I called the producers of Another World. I said, "This kid's hot. Sign him." And they're like, "Eh."
On that note, alas and alack, we are out of time. My guest has been, we did Alina first, so now we're doing Tom. Tom Lisanti, author of a gazillion books. The
latest one.
Texas. He's also written Dueling Harlows, which you should get, about Jean Harlow and biopics. Alina Adams, who's written how many books? 20 books?
This is my 20th.
Holy, you know what. Okay. Holy excrement. Let's keep it clean. So anyway, and I'm Diana Montford. This has been the Diana Montford Show. Even if no one else loves you, I love you. Mwah, 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 mwah. And you should buy these books because they need the money. She has kids,
I do 3, 2 of them in college.
Yeah, hey, help, Tuition comes around sooner than you think.
Soon, actually, next week.
There you go. So anyway, these are the books at Hold Up Texas.
Oh, thank you.
And here we go. And they're great books and you'll love them. I'm kidding about, buy them because they're good. Anyway, love you a lot. See you next time. Bye.